Can I tell you about a moment that replays in my mind every single day? It's such a brief exchange, something that would seem insignificant to anyone else. Just a few words spoken on an ordinary afternoon, but those words have become the dividing line between who I was and who I am now. My name is Jessica. I'm 32. And this story begins on a crisp autumn day in Colorado, with golden aspen leaves dancing across the trail and the scent of pine hanging in the mountain air. Olivia and I were hiking our favorite trail near Boulder. We'd been best friends since college, 15 years of shared apartments, bad breakups, career struggles, and countless adventures. She was more family to me than friend, the sister I never had. We finished each other's sentences, knew each other's coffee orders by heart, and had an uncanny ability to text each other at exactly the same moment. That day was perfect, clear blue skies stretching endlessly above us. Temperatures cool but not cold, the aspen trees creating a canopy of gold overhead, the kind of day that makes you feel lucky just to be alive. We'd packed a small picnic to enjoy at the summit: sourdough bread, aged cheddar, green apples, and thermoses of hot cider spiked with cinnamon whiskey. Olivia had been quieter than usual on the drive up. I'd noticed but didn't push it, figuring she was just tired from the long hours she'd been putting in at the hospital. She was a pediatric oncology nurse, the kind of job that takes everything you have and then asks for more. I was used to her occasional periods of introspection after particularly difficult weeks with her young patients. About halfway up the trail, she stopped suddenly beside a small clearing where sunlight poured through the trees like liquid gold. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, tendrils escaping to frame her face. She looked beautiful and somehow fragile in that light. "Let's take a break," she said, dropping her backpack onto a fallen log. I shrugged and sat beside her, taking a long drink from my water bottle and checking my phone. No service, as expected at this elevation. She was looking out across the valley, her expression thoughtful. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "Jess," she said, still gazing at the distant mountains, "if I leave today, do you know what you've meant to me?" I remember Lafina's short, dismissive sound that I now replay in my nightmares. "Stop being dramatic," I said, nudging her shoulder playfully. "What's with the heavy question? Did one of those sad hospital movies mess with your head again?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe," she conceded. "Just feeling philosophical today, I guess." "Well, save the philosophy for after we've had some whiskey cider," I replied, already standing and adjusting my backpack. "We've got another mile to the summit, and I'm starving." She nodded and rose more slowly, looking around the clearing as if trying to memorize it. I was already several steps ahead when she called my name, "Jess." I turned, impatient to keep moving. "Yeah, I love you," she said simply. "You know that, right?" "Duh," I replied with a grin. "I love you too, weirdo. Now, come on before the clouds roll in." She nodded and followed me up the trail, her footsteps so quiet I kept having to glance back to make sure she was still there. At the summit, we sat on sun-warmed rocks and unpacked our picnic. The view was spectacular, mountains rolling into the distance. The reservation valley spread below us, aspens creating patches of gold against the dark green pines. We ate in companionable silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who don't need words to feel connected. Eventually, Olivia spoke again, her voice blending with the sound of wind through the trees. "Do you believe in fate, Jess?" I was pouring more cider into my thermos cap. "Not really," I answered without much thought. "I think we make our own choices, and the universe is mostly random." She nodded slowly. "I used to think that too. Something in her tone made me look up. The afternoon sun caught the unshaded tears in her eyes, making them shine like amber. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of concern. Liv, is everything okay? I asked, finally paying attention. She blinked, and the tears were gone, replaced by a smile that seemed genuine enough to quiet my worry. Everything's exactly as it should be, she said. I'm just grateful for today, for this. She gestured at the mountains, the sky, the space between us, for all of it. We stayed at the summit until the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, casting long shadows across the valley. As we packed up our remnants, Olivia insisted on taking a selfie of us with the glowing mountains in the background. Since when are you so into documenting everything? I teased, but posed with her anyway, my cheek pressed against hers, both of us smiling. She studied the photo for a long moment before tucking her phone away. It's a good one, she said softly. Your eyes look happy. The hike down was easier, gravity doing most of the work. We talked about everyday things, a new restaurant in town, a movie we wanted to see, plans for the upcoming holiday season, normal conversation that gave no hint of what was to come. At the trailhead, as we loaded our backpacks into my Subaru, Olivia hugged me suddenly and fiercely. I hugged her back automatically, laughing a little at the intensity. What's that for? I asked when she finally released me. Just because, she replied, her smile small but peaceful. Thanks for today, Jess. It was perfect. Any time, I said, already thinking about the hot shower and takeout Thai food waiting for me at home. Same time next weekend. She nodded, but didn't actually say yes. Another detail I'd only remember later. We drove back to Boulder with the windows down, singing along to our favorite playlist songs we'd been sharing since our college days. Olivia asked me to drop her at her apartment rather than coming in for our usual post-hike beer. I'm pretty tired, she explained. Think I'll just turn in early. Party pooper, I teased, but didn't argue. Text me tomorrow. Sure, she said, gathering her things. Before closing the car door, she looked back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sweet dreams, Jess. Night, Liv, I replied, already putting the car in drive. Those were the last words I ever spoke to my best friend. The next morning, I went about my Sunday routines, leaping in, making coffee, scrolling through social media. Around noon, I realized I hadn't heard from Olivia. I sent a quick text. Morning, sunshine. How's the hangover from all that wild sleep you got? No response. By evening, mild irritation had grown into nagging worry. Olivia always answered texts, even when she was working. I called her cell straight to voicemail. I called the hospital. She wasn't scheduled that weekend. Finally, as darkness fell, I drove to her apartment and used the spare key she'd given me years ago. The apartment was empty, perfectly clean, everything in its place. On the kitchen counter was an envelope with my name written in her familiar looping handwriting. Inside was a letter, and as I read the first few lines, the world shifted beneath my feet. My dearest Jess, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not in the way you might fear, so please don't panic. I've simply left, taken a journey I've been planning for some time. Remember yesterday when I asked if you knew what you've meant to me? You laughed it off, told me to stop being dramatic. But I need you to know, need to put it into words. The letter went on to explain everything, how she'd been offered a position with Doctors Without Borders, a dream she'd harbored since nursing school, but never pursued. How she'd finally accepted after months of deliberation. How she'd be serving in a remote region of northern Ethiopia for at least a year, possibly longer. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd try to talk me out of it. Or worse, You'd support me so completely that I'd lose my nerve. Either way, I needed to make this decision on my own. Yesterday was my goodbye gift to myself, one perfect day with my favorite person in my favorite place. I'm sorry for the mystery, for the drama you hate so much. My flight leaves tonight. By the time you read this, I'll be somewhere over the Atlantic. No way to reach me until I arrive and establish communications, which could take weeks. Take care of my plants, and maybe occasionally check on my mom. I love you more than mountains, Jess. More than I've ever been able to say out loud. Liv, I read the letter 3 times. Emotions, cycling between relief, confusion, hurt, and anger. She wasn't gone in the permanent sense I'd initially feared, but she had left. Without a proper goodbye, without letting me process it, without giving me a chance to drive her to the airport or throw her a farewell party or do any of the normal things people do when someone they love leaves. I tried calling her cell again, knowing it was futile, straight to voicemail, as expected. I sent texts that wouldn't be delivered, emails that wouldn't be read. It was only later, as I watered her plants in the silent apartment, that her question on the mountain came back to me with painful clarity. If I leave today, do you know what you've meant to me? And my thoughtless response, stop being dramatic. She'd been trying to tell me. In her way, she'd been saying goodbye, and I'd dismissed it, brushed it off, been too caught up in my own comfort to recognize the weight of her words. 3 days later, her mother called me. Olivia's plane had gone down over the Mediterranean. Mechanical failure. No survivors. The journey she'd waited her entire life to take had no return ticket after all. And the last words I said to her, my brilliant, compassionate, brave best friend, were, stop being dramatic. It's been 2 years since that autumn day on the mountain. 730 days of replaying our final conversation, searching for signs I missed, words I should have said differently, moments I should have treasured more carefully. 2 years of watering Olivia's plants, which somehow continued to thrive despite my historically black thumb. 2 years of Sunday dinners with her mother, where we carefully navigate around the Olivia-shaped hole in the conversation. 2 years of living with the knowledge that my best friend tried to tell me goodbye, and I told her to stop being dramatic. The photograph from the summit, the last one ever taken of us together, sits framed on my nightstand. Our faces close together, mountains glowing behind us, both smiling. But when I look closely at Olivia's eyes, I can see what I missed that day. The bittersweet knowledge that she was memorizing our friendship, preserving it like pressed flowers between the pages of her heart. Your eyes look happy, she had said about me in the photo. Only now do I understand she was cataloging the details of my face, filing away the image of my happiness as something to carry with her. After the initial shock and grief came the questions, relentless and unanswerable. Why hadn't she told me about the job offer? Why leave without a proper goodbye? Why construct such an elaborate final day together without giving me the chance to know it was final? Olivia's mother had some answers, though not all. She'd known about the Doctors Without Borders position, had even helped Olivia prepare for the interview months earlier. She was afraid. Her mother told me over tea one evening, her hands cupping the mug the same way Olivia's always had, not of going, but of you trying to make her stay. I would never, I protested, hurt by the implication. Her mother smiled sadly, not intentionally, no, but you were her anchor, Jessica. The person who made home feel like home. She knew if she told you, you'd be supportive and enthusiastic because that's who you are. And your support would have reminded her of everything she was leaving behind. I understood then, at least partially. Olivia had always been the more cautious one in our friendship, the one who needed time to process big changes. I was the impulsive one, diving headfirst into new experiences. While she tested the waters carefully, she'd needed to make this decision in her own way, on her own terms. But understanding doesn't ease the ache of missing her final moments, of not knowing it was goodbye. In the months after her departure, I became obsessed with retracing our steps from that final day. I hiked our trail dozens of times, sat in the exact spot where she'd asked her question, tried to recapture the quality of light, the smell of the air, the sound of her voice. Once, in the depths of grief, I even camped overnight at the summit, irrationally hoping that somehow the thinness of air at elevation might bring me closer to wherever she was now. I lay awake watching stars appear one by one, wondering if she could see the same constellations. Slowly, painfully, I've learned to carry my grief differently, not as a weight that threatens to pull me under, but as a companion that walks beside me, reminding me of what matters. I've learned that regret serves no purpose unless it transforms how you live. So I've changed how I live. I listen more carefully when friends speak. I pay attention to the subtleties, the pauses between words, the things left unsaid, the questions that might be disguised as casual conversation. I've stopped dismissing emotions as dramatic, recognizing that depth of feeling isn't weakness, but courage. 6 months ago, I made a decision that would have shocked the old Jessica. I applied to Doctors Without Borders myself. Not as a healthcare provider, my skills as a graphic designer wouldn't be much help in a medical crisis, but as a communications specialist, I needed to understand what had called to Olivia so powerfully that she'd been willing to leave everything behind. Next month, I leave for a 6-month assignment in Rwanda. My apartment is sublet. My freelance clients notified. Olivia's plants temporarily rehomed with her mother. Unlike Olivia, I've told everyone about my plans. I've had proper goodbyes, farewell parties, even a ridiculous Jessica's African adventure calendar that my parents had printed with my face superimposed over safari scenes. Last weekend, I hiked our trail one final time before my departure. At the summit, I unpacked a small picnic sourdough bread, aged cheddar, green apples, and a thermos of hot cider spiked with cinnamon whiskey. I set out 2 servings, though only one would be consumed. As the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, I took out the letter I'd written, words that should have been said 2 years ago, but perhaps weren't too late even now. My dearest Liv, I'm sitting at our spot, watching the same sun sink below the same mountains. Everything here is unchanged. The trail, the trees, the view, everything except me. You asked me a question that day. If I leave today, do you know what you've meant to me? I brushed it off, told you to stop being dramatic. It was the wrong answer to the most important question, and I would give anything to go back and answer differently. So here's what I should have said. You've meant everything. Liv. You've been my constant, my true north, my person. You've been the voice in my head that asks, what would Olivia do whenever I'm faced with a difficult choice? You've been my favorite hello and my hardest goodbye, though I didn't know it was goodbye at the time. I understand now why you left the way you did. You were always braver than me, willing to follow your heart even when it led you away from comfort and certainty. You knew yourself well enough to recognize that you needed to make this journey on your own terms. I wish I'd paid attention that day. I wish I'd seen the weight behind your words, heard the farewell in your voice, noticed the way you were memorizing everything. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Your plane would still have fallen from the sky. You would still be gone. But at least I would have had the chance to tell you properly what you've meant to me. In a month, I leave for Rwanda with Doctors Without Borders. Different country, different role, but the same organization that called to you. I'm not trying to finish your journey. No, that's impossible. I'm starting my own, inspired by your courage. When I look at our last photo together, I see now what you must have seen that day. A perfect moment suspended in time. Your eyes look happy. You said they were happy. Live. Every moment with you made me happy. Even when I was too busy or distracted to fully appreciate it. I water your plants every week. They're thriving, somehow. I have Sunday dinner with your mom. We're healing, somehow. I keep living, somehow. But nothing is the same without you here. If I could have just one more moment with you, I wouldn't dismiss your words or rush you along the trail. I would sit with you in that clearing of golden light, and I would tell you this: you meant everything to me. Live, you still do, and no journey is too far, no absence too long, to change that simple truth. Wherever you are, save a spot for me at the summit. We'll share that picnic again someday. With all my love, Jess. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it beneath a small cairn of stones I built beside our picnic spot. Not because I believed Olivia would somehow read it, but because saying goodbye properly matters even when it comes too late. The sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose that would have made Olivia reach for her camera. A cool breeze swept across the summit, carrying the scent of pine and distant snow. I know what you meant to me, Liv, I whispered into the gathering dusk. I always did, I just didn't say it when it mattered. As I packed up our picnic eating her portion, as she would have insisted, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. Not the absence of grief, but its transformation into something I could carry more gently. Her journey had no return, but perhaps, in some small way, mine would carry forward what hers could not finish, not as a replacement or continuation, but as a parallel path born from the same source: love, courage, and the willingness to leave comfort behind in service of something greater. I took one last photo from the summit as darkness began to claim the valley, just the mountains this time, no people. In the fading light, the world looked softer somehow. The hard edges of reality blurred into something more forgiving. Olivia would have said it was beautiful. And this time, I wouldn't have rushed her down the trail. I would have agreed and stayed to watch the stars appear, one by one.